For being part of the show today, and we are set for the second segment of the show. We'll be asking some questions around this controversy surrounding IMF loan repayment by the federal government of Nigeria. Although it has been stated that we have just paid the principal, but the other aspect is still standing, the interest and the rest of them. But we'll diverse around that issue as Tajudeen has now joined me. A very good day to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Falari.
All right. So I know you have read and gone through the controversy issue around this payment, but we want to take a look at the technical aspect of the issue first before you go to the controversy. What's your expectation from NAS as the tax reform bill is being set? Because that will kick off this week, and I hope many of us have been following the tax reform bill in National Assembly. So let me hear your reaction as others will put their voice to the tax reform.
Yeah, I think it's one of the good things that this National Assembly is doing, that they have managed to pass the 4 bills within this time, despite the controversy. So I don't expect there's going to be any problem when they sit down to harmonize the bills, the 2 chambers of the National Assembly. Because the National Assembly, they know that it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing for this country to do at this time. And I think that is why they are also in a rush to make sure that this thing comes out. Yes, it's passed. So I don't see any problem at all.
So in your own view now, there won't be any problem. But on the side of Nigerians, what should they be expecting? You know, I know you are not a member of National Assembly, but I know you are a senior journalist.
What should they be expecting
who have covered National
from
Assembly?
The National Assembly?
Yes. From the tax bill, from National Assembly harmonization, and the rest of them.
I think, to be fair, you know, the government of Nigeria, including the subnational, state and local government, you need money to operate. And these tax bills, you know, even though it has harmonized all the taxes, you can expect that Nigerians will be taxed, you know, slightly higher. Some states will introduce certain taxes just to boost their whatever. Yeah, so I think Nigerians should also be ready to pay more taxes. But that also means that we must be ready to also become watchdogs to see how our money is being spent.
Exactly.
I remember when they started this thing in Lagos, you know, people were crying. They say, oh, we're paying this, we're paying that, we're paying that. You know, but a lot of people today say that, oh, we see what they are doing with the money. So if people see what the governments are doing with the money, I'm not sure Nigerians will complain too much.
Exactly. So having said and having looked at that particular issue, but let's not get to the bulk of our discussion of today.
Yes.
IMF COVID-19 repayment by federal government of Nigeria. It became a big news over the weekend. It became a trending issue. On the side of the government, they have done well. But some critical analysts will say, no, you have not done well. You still have interest of this money to pay. But what was your own reaction when you heard the news?
Frankly speaking, when I saw the tweet from Ortega, the special advisor on, I shared his enthusiasm. Because people have been crying, we are borrowing. Now we are paying back. You know, even if we have not paying back everything, if government is servicing loans, I mean, it's something to be proud of. That it shows that we are still solvent. The economy is still able to meet those kind of obligations. So me, I think it's a good thing. It's not this government that incurred the debt. It was a COVID-19 support in 2020. So if they have been able to pay the principal, we all know that even when you, as individuals, when you go to banks to borrow money, you pay interest.
Exactly.
You pay interest. So if they say, oh, now we are here to pay the interest, we have to pay. The government is not saying that we are not going to pay it. You know, and the IMF is not saying that Nigeria cannot pay it. Exactly. You know, and I think even from the statement by the country representative of IMF, I think it's more or less like commendation to the Nigerian government that, oh, they have paid this, but they still have this to pay. Exactly. So I don't see any controversy there.
I think talking about we still have the interest to pay. The interest is about $30 million US dollar, and the equivalent to about 275 billion naira thereabout. But let's also, I don't want to bulk ourselves with too much of the figure, but This COVID-19 loan, share your experience of that sharing, because 2020 was not too far away from us here, but at least many Nigerians we have forgotten that there was a money collected that was giving share to people to eat, to drink, to support their businesses. I mean, from your own angle of it.
Yeah, I think the loan was not properly managed, to be honest. Most Nigerians will agree with that. The loans were not properly managed. The execution of the COVID-19 plan was haphazard, you know, and look at the report of the Auditor General of the Federation early this year. They found out that there are sharp practices, that the money was moved from account to account like that. So that will tell you that there was corruption. You can trust our civil servants to
help themselves with
to help themselves with some of this money. So that's why some people are always against government borrowing, because the system has a way of just making the money disappear, and then government, the burden will continue to pile up. That's the problem.
And interestingly, Femi Falana yesterday did a press conference and said federal government must investigate how those money were missing, even though we have paid the $3.4 billion US. But the interest now, we are going to pay it, and the government will cut the money out of some people, from our taxes and the rest of them. But when you now talk about this corruption issue that have made it COVID-19, and it's like it's not just COVID-19 that will normally have this particular issue, particularly money coming from COVID, but other issues still embedded in corruption in Nigeria.
Exactly.
So from your own angle, apart from corruption, what else hampered the distribution of that money in 2020 and at that period in time?
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest culprit is corruption. Because one of the ways to stop borrowing, for a country to stop borrowing, is to stop corruption, stop utilizing, is to utilize the money you borrow properly. We know that there's nothing wrong in borrowing, as long as you use it very well. But when you borrow and you cannot account for the money that you borrow, then it becomes a burden that you cannot put down. So for me, I think corruption is the biggest problem we have in this country. I was saying it the other day. If you just take Nigeria budget, nearly 70% go for recurrent. Who are the people in charge? Is it not the civil service? Okay, they consume over 70% of our budget. They are the ones that will supervise all even the remaining 30 that is going for capital. They are still the one that will supervise it. I will know all the things that happen. You understand? So I support what Falana is saying, that there's need to probe it. Let us probe it. If we find that some people have helped themselves with our money, we need to deal with that.
Exactly. And talking about Falana, calling out for the proving of that money and the rest of them, but it's a bigger challenge that many Nigerians want to find out. You don't understand. Do you think that particular money really helped Nigeria out of the COVID-19 situation at that time? Yes. $3.4 billion US.
Yes, I think so. I think so, because don't forget that Nigeria was living on loans. So the time COVID-19 happened, what are we going to fall back on when revenue was not coming from anywhere? What are we going to fall back on? And of course, we saw all the various interventions that were done by the Presidential Committee on this COVID-19 something. But what we are saying is that it helped, of course. They set up, what did they call these? Their centers, where they quarantine people and
the rest of them.
They purchase drugs, and medical equipment and all that. You understand? But of course, what we saw happened is not is not up to a quarter or a fraction of the money.
Exactly. Because I'm coming to that because it was that 2020 we also have the Lekki toll gate protest, where Nigerians went to the street and began to boggle warehouses. So someone will quickly recall us, if you say COVID-19 money was judiciously used, you could recall that some state governors that was giving money to put food in somewhere, close those places, until when Nigerians now went out and began to open those places. So those are the challenges.
The money was not judiciously used. And I think nobody in Nigeria who understands how government operates will be surprised. The money was not judiciously used. That's the truth. So let the government, if the government wants to fight corruption, let them look into that. Let them look into that. I think it should be very easy to track that money. So the government can, EFCC can work on that. ICPC can work on that. They can track the money. Let us see where the money went and hold people accountable. If you don't hold people accountable, it's going to happen again.
Definitely, you are very correct in that, because we are also seeing a lot of intervention being carried out by the federal government in recent time. And as Tajudeen said, if we don't tackle corruption in this regard, it could be a challenge. But another issue we also need to look around this particular COVID-19 money that was given and the loan that we are paying back is that, is this the first time Nigeria will be paying its loan to IMF or World Bank so swift like this, or you have heard any other instances? Or
no, frankly speaking, in my experience, I don't think we are paid like this. I've not read anywhere where we are paid debt like this. Instead, we are asking for debt forgiveness. That was what happened in 2005 during the regime of Obasanjo. You know, we begged for debt forgiveness, and after they forgave us $18 billion, we started piling up debt again.
Very seriously.
So that's the thing. So that's why I think that let's leave politics aside. I think this government is focused. It knows what he wants to do, and I think they are going ahead to do it.
Although I've asked some of my colleague economists who have shared that the reason why we quickly paid this $3.4 billion is that because that particular money is tied to our SDR. SDR with IMF, special drawing right. And special drawing right is a very technical account with the IMF that is tied to your currency devaluation. And they were like, that is the reason, because if we don't pay it, a time will come, the devaluation that we are carried out will not be able to carry that, and something will happen. Do you share in that sentiment also?
No, I don't share in that sentiment. That's just an opinion. It doesn't mean that that's the situation. But the opinion could hold true.
True, yes.
It could hold true. And if it is even true, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? That means that Nigeria is helping itself. Okay? So I don't see anything wrong with that, honestly. That's why I said that if the government is focused, they know what they want, and they are taking every step that will facilitate the things that they want to achieve.
Although I also agree with you to an extent, because at that point in time when we collected our own 3.4 billion, other African countries, about 53 of them also follow Nigeria to collect their own. South Africa collected, Cameroon collected. Name them.
They have not paid back.
They have not paid, but Nigeria,
including
only,
Egypt.
Egypt, all of them collected this SRF, Rapid Finance instrument from IMF. And it's quite interesting that for Nigeria we have paid our own, but we still have the interest to pay. But on the other hand, when you now mention that the government have done, well in this regard, others may not want to agree to that because we still have other loans, other debt on our head. I've made mention in my introduction that currently right now our debt is about 144 trillion naira as we speak today. But as you pointed out, the government have done pretty well in this regard. But in other aspects, what do you expect the government to do? As swiftly they could pay IMF a loan, they could also apply such swiftness in development purpose in Nigeria. So what do you have to say about that?
I agree with you. In 1998, before our debt forgiveness, in 1998, our debt was about $28 billion. But it was more than 75% of our GDP. Now our debt is 144 point something trillion. But it's 51% of our GDP. There is progress there. That's what I think from a layman point of view. I think there's progress there. But there are other things that the government still needs to do, to put the economy on a better footing. That's maybe we'll get to that.
We'll get to that because one of the key questions I will have to ask in that regard is the debt sustainability. Servicing debt is a big burden on Nigeria. In 2025 budget, we are budgeting about 18 trillion naira to service debt. What do you have to say about, because one of the key arguments is that if we keep piling up this debt, the servicing of it is where we have issue.
Yes, I agree. It's a problem. But you have to pay your debt.
Definitely.
You can't run away from that, you know. You can reschedule it, you can renegotiate and things like that, but you have to pay your debt. Otherwise, you are an irresponsible country. You have to pay your debt. What we just need to do is to increase our revenue, our revenue stream. If Nigeria can increase its revenue stream, which we know that is almost 80–90% dependent on the oil sector, and now prices are going down. So if we must find the ways, and I hope we are going to get to that later.
Exactly. We'll get to that level.
If you don't increase your revenue, there's nothing you can do about it. I don't know whether economists or financial experts will have solutions.
They have been, I think in their own way, they have preferred solution.
Okay.
At the last IMF World Bank Spring meeting that ended about 3 weeks ago,
yes,
even IMF accused Nigeria that you say you will be doing economic diversification. You are not doing it.
Exactly.
So in your own understanding, when you talk about this new stream of income, it should come from the non-oil sector.
Exactly.
But as we see it today, what's your perception of economic diversification according to federal government of Nigeria?
Honestly, I think this is the first time that we're having a government that is not paying lip service to economic diversification. This is the first time. The other day I went to Abuja Cadastral Office and I saw it was like a market. It was like a market, and it was not like that a few years ago. That is because this government is looking at solid minerals.
Exactly.
They are issuing licenses. People are struggling. I read in the paper the other day, 2 companies are struggling to have a license over a particular area, you know, in Kebbi State. So that means that there is some activities going on. And you can see the president put someone he trusts in that position, a long-time friend of his. He's the Minister of Solid Minerals. Okay? So apart from solid minerals, well, it's only, I think, in agriculture that I've not seen something solid. And that is an area that we also need to improve. We really need to focus on agriculture, because if you focus on agriculture, agriculture can employ more than 60% of Nigerians, both on in the farms and the agro business. So
I will agree with you on that agricultural aspect, because although I also have an issue with agriculture in the sense that the last administration of President Bola Buhari, his economic diversification was aimed on agriculture. But we saw that they only focused on rice production, cassava, and some few crops. But at the end of the day, nothing can be said of it.
Because the states are not taking ownership. I have spoken to an agric expert, and I've been to many seminars, you understand? And they have said that, look, no matter what the federal government does to support agriculture, if the states are not taking ownership, it's not going to work. Because the state have the resources, you know, they are the owner of the land, you know. So if government is giving you resources to do this and you are diverting it, you are doing something else with it. So what is the federal government going to do? It is a federation. That should be the business. The government is just supposed to support the state. The federal government is just supposed to support the state. The states themselves are supposed to look at a state like Kano. Look at a state like Jigawa. I remember one of the governors of Jigawa State some times ago. I don't want to mention his name. He's my friend, and he wanted to build a cargo airport in Jigawa State. And I suggested to him, I said, Your Excellency, Jigawa is a rural state. What you need here is to invest in agriculture and agro businesses, and you are going to see the kind of transformation that will happen to the state. Because at that time, the state was generating 0 IGR. So who is going to be going to the cargo airport? But the way he said, I don't understand politics, and then they went ahead and built it. But look at the place, it's just there. Nobody is using it. Where are the produce that you will take there? This is the problem. Our governors misplace their priorities. I'm going to blame the governors more, because they have the resources. They have the resources, and they are closer to the people. So if agriculture is going to succeed, states must also invest in it. I don't know whether I mentioned it on this program before. Kano State, the land mass that they have and the water that they have there, There was a group from Israel that visited Kano and said that if Israel were to be in Kano, it will feed the whole of Africa from Kano. Not just Nigeria, it will feed the whole of Africa through mechanized farming. So what is wrong in the state government investing in mechanized farming? What is wrong with that? Why are they not doing it? This is the question I ask people.
And talking about the state, as Riley mentioned, do you know that the debt we are even talking about that is piling up on Nigeria, the public debt that's piled up to 144 trillion naira, close to half of it is owned by state and local government. So if Tajudeen is not suggesting that they need to look at a way of streamlining their income so that we can look away from debt, because one of the key questions that IMF and World Bank asked Nigeria at the last meeting was that you say you will do economic diversification, but you are not doing it as expected. And Tajudeen has suggested economic diversification can also come from agriculture as being played. But away from that, another issue around this payment of this loan as it become a controversy in the last few days is that government is looking at a way, the President Tinubu of his own is looking at a way to enshrine a more sustainable fiscal policy in Nigeria. Do you see him succeeding with that? Because not that he's the first person to do this. Other presidents have come to say they want to do sustainable fiscal policy, but they end up not doing it as expected. But from his own angle, how do you think he will succeed?
Well, I don't know how he's going to do it, because I know that the way this country is structured is difficult. You know, the way this country is structured, it is difficult. But maybe now that he has created some development commissions, I don't know whether he intends to work through the development commissions, you know, because our bureaucracy is too large. Nigeria's bureaucracy is too large. We have over 600,000 MDAs. You know? I think about 600.
Yes, I think they were about 1,000 plus before they shrink them to.
So how do you? Some of them are even doing the same thing. So how do you make effective policy implementation in that kind of situation? Look at what they did during the Buhari administration when they said this social investment scheme of the Buhari administration. How did it end? How did it end? They frustrated with corruption. People will help themselves once they say that there is loophole. You know, go to any ministry now and say you are pursuing something. You want. The other day we went to Ministry of Environment to say what is Nigeria's position on climate change.
Exactly.
What is Nigeria doing about climate change? And they told us, the person we met, that was the chief press officer of the ministry. He said somebody that one side you have to go and write. When you write, you take it to this man. He's the one in charge. Okay, we wrote. For 1 month, we are pursuing that. When the man now eventually came, and then we met him, the man now said that on this issue, it's not my office that you should come. You have to go to another office. We went to the office, and that one said, I can't talk on this issue. You know? So that is the kind of thing. You know, fiscal, you see, it's difficult. The way this country is structured, the way government is structured, is difficult to achieve anything. That's what I'm telling you. There's a former Attorney General of the Federation, something with Joe, I forgot. Bayojo. He used to say that the office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice should be separated.
Yes.
He was arguing. They now made him Minister of
Justice.
They made him Minister of Justice. After 6 months, he was not saying anything again. So a smart journalist in this day now went and interviewed him and said, "Sir, what happened to what you used to advocate?" He now laughed. He said, "My friend, when you are outside, what you are seeing is not what you see when you are inside." That just summarizes the problem why a lot of things cannot work in this kind of system that we practice. Since the military turned Nigeria to a unitary state, it's difficult. How can you be making all decisions in Abuja, and the states are just following like that? You know, I don't understand.
It's like when you say you don't understand, I think many Nigerians and viewers out there, we need to understand that physical instability or physical imbalance comes when loans, borrowed money are stolen. Just like Tajudeen have said, if when those money are stolen, it becomes a challenge to the economy of the country. Although President Tinubu, on his own part, he's trying everything possible has been put for. I mean, Tajudeen also make us understand the government is trying their best, but the system, the way Nigeria is structured, could be a challenge. But away from that, and let us begin to prefer solutions to this issue. Particularly, let's start with the payment. A lot of people are saying we should commend the government for paying this money so swiftly, $3.4 billion. Others are saying we should not commend them at this point in time because we still have about 270 billion to pay. But from the angle of the position of the government today, it's like they have to pay their money and they are paid it. Going forward on other multilateral, bilateral loans that we own, what should the government do?
Yeah, I think the government should have a work plan. They should have a work plan that will enable them service these loans and reduce borrowing.
Exactly.
If you can be servicing our loans and try as much as possible to reduce our borrowing through domestic investment and all these other things that we talked about focusing on non-oil sector, you know, agriculture, mining, and even services. This will help us because it has to be a holistic thing. You cannot say you want to pay your debt, you are servicing your debt, and you are borrowing more. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
But the situation that we are now, there's no way the government will not borrow. But the good thing I see with this administration is that they are borrowing to finance projects. The last time I counted, there are over 14 or 15 big-time infrastructure projects going across the country, including the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, the Sokoto-Badagry Highway. These are in every region like that. You find these major roads are being done. You understand? So that is something significant. The other day I read that over 200,000 housing units have been delivered last year alone. So if there's nothing wrong in borrowing, like we used to say. If they are financing, well, if you are using the money to finance infrastructure projects, projects that can make the economy, that can give the economy more life, you know, more lifeline. I think we may be able to pay our debts.
Exactly. Now, to the state governors, I need to quickly come in here. The state governors also need our advice. It's not just federal government alone that is supposed to be doing all these gigantic projects and the rest of them. The state governors also need to take a leave, although some of them are trying, but not as expected because they're supposed to be the one that's supposed to be bringing the project down to the grassroots as expected.
In fact, I think a lot of over 90% actually depends on the state. That's my opinion. If you're a state governor, you have to make sure that you do the right things. You are not elected there just to sit in government house and come to Abuja to collect money at the end of the month and then share it. Because that's what many of them are doing. You don't see any rigorous thinking that they are doing to change the narrative in their state. Why, for instance, will a governor said that there is insecurity in my state and I cannot handle it because I don't control police, I don't control military. It doesn't make sense. You have a security meeting that you chair. You understand? It's not as if you say, oh, this is how we should do it, this is how you should do it, and then the police say, no, you can't give us orders. You see, it's the same thing with the economy. You know, it's the same thing. This is one of the things that brought about the problem with the controversy with the tax bills.
Exactly. The sharing formula and the rest of them.
You're a Kano governor. Why, for instance, Kano is a commercial city. Why will you not be able to raise little taxes and make people pay little taxes? But they are not ready to tax the people. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but instead of borrowing, and you know that even if it's 5 naira, I can tax these people, you understand? And then just to ensure that the state does not go borrowing. You understand? Why won't you do it? There are some places, there are some states where they don't pay tax. You go to the market, you don't pay tax, you don't pay anything, you know?
Although on the aspect of tax in the market, I've had experience whereby local government have vendors who buy those taxes for the year from them. You get it? That's where most of them don't have the accountability to give to the people when it comes to local tax like that. Then let's now also give advice to the private sector in this regard, because they also have a role to play in the economy. Particularly, they are the ones that normally look out for the infrastructure, power, good roads, and the rest of them. They normally clamp on government that we are not seeing power, we are not seeing good roads to assist or aid our businesses.
Yeah, I think there's very little that we can tell the private sector. Very little in the sense that a businessman will put his money where he knows he can get returns. And if the conditions are not suitable, you can't force him to put his money there. So that's why what the government needs to do, is to make the environment business friendly. Enact laws that they are doing that will make the environment business friendly. Provide infrastructure, you know, and I like the fact that we're trying to go solar now.
Exactly.
Solar is an option that the government is looking at, which is good. That can make, it can reduce the cost of doing business.
Exactly.
And recently there was also this agreement with, with one Chinese group to refurbish our transmission lines. Because that's the biggest problem we have in electricity. We can generate more electricity,
but we can't transmit.
But we cannot evacuate them. Because of the dilapidated infrastructure. Apart from vandalism, the structure, the transmission lines are obsolete. See, in 2011, when they concluded the power reform, you know, they paid all these discos, other discos, GEMCOs, they call them. When they got the license, because one of them was telling me the other day, said, what the government was, they had an agreement with the government that the money they paid will be taken to refurbish the transmission lines. That was not done.
I mean, there will be a question on the government of that day.
Yeah,
that period. So where did they keep the money and the rest of it?
No, they could have diverted the money to something else. I'm not saying they embezzled it. They could have used it for something else. Yeah, but the important thing is that make the environment business friendly. You know, if you make the environment business friendly, businessmen, investors will come all over the world. You don't need to travel and say, I'm looking for investor.
And that has been very, very interesting from you, Sulaiman. Yes. And really want to appreciate you for coming on the show today. You know, in a simplified discussion on evaluating IMF loan that we have paid. And it has made us understand that it's a good thing, even though the government have celebrated it. But, you know, the interest is to be paid. But Nigerians are looking at how some of these loans can really impact them. And we can take it that the COVID-19 really impacted Nigeria, particularly in the medical sector, where we provided hospital for all the COVID-19 centers and the rest of them. But going forward, we need to stabilize our fiscal sustainability. If we don't do that, we'll keep borrowing. And to stabilize our fiscal sustainability means we need to generate more money and generate it and make it more transparent and accountable for Nigeria. Sulaiman, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We hope that when we call you again, you will be here to help us out. So this will be the size of our show today.